This Texas lawyer mysteriously vanishes in 1993. Then, on the same day, a John Doe is killed in a hit and run in the middle of nowhere, Washington. Police soon learn both men are one and the same. So, how did David Glenn Lewis get there? Who killed him and why? Let's recap. January 31st, 1993. It's Super Bowl Sunday. The Dallas Cowboys are playing the Buffalo Bills. Every football fan in America has their eyes glued to the screen. All but one diehard Cowboy fan who's about to embark on the strangest and last journey of his life. David Glenn Lewis is a 39-year-old judge and lawyer from Amarillo, Texas. For the past 2 days, his behavior has been odd. His wife and daughter are away in Dallas. They've been gone since Thursday. Between Friday and Sunday, his red Ford Explorer has been spotted traveling between his home, work, and the Amarillo airport. He vanished on Super Bowl Sunday. Then on Monday, he appeared in Dallas with a wad of cash and a plane ticket. But before the sun could rise on Tuesday, David Lewis was dead. He was found over 1,600 miles from home in the remote town of Moxee, Washington. For 10 years, nobody in Amarillo knew what had happened to David. Meanwhile, police in Moxee had a John Doe on their hands and an ice-cold hit-and-run case. In 2003, everything came together when one dogged detective made a simple Google query. He reopened the door on one of America's strangest cold cases, but when he did, more unanswered questions poured out. How did David end up in Moxee? Who killed him? Why did they kill him? Was he on the run? Was he meeting somebody? Or was he simply at the end of his rope? Let's unravel this together. David Glenn Lewis loved 3 things: his family, his job, and the Dallas Cowboys. He was a small-town quarterback at Phillips High School in Hutchinson County. He graduated from Texas Tech in 1975 and walked across the same stage in 79 with a law degree. By 1982, David was an up-and-coming lawyer in the Texas Panhandle. He met and married his wife Karen in 1982, and they had 1 daughter together. The Lewis family lived in Dumas, a small town north of Amarillo. David ran a private practice and worked for the DA's office in Sherman and Wheeler counties. In 1986, he became a judge in Moore County, but David had higher aspirations. In 1990, he ran unsuccessfully for the 69th District Court judgeship. Defeated, David returned to his position. Some say business was slow. Others believe David picked up where he left off. His friends described David as the ultimate nice guy, a real family man. He did volunteer work, led Sunday school, and helped illiterate people learn to read. He also taught night classes at Amarillo College. As far as anybody knew, David didn't keep secrets and he didn't make enemies. If that's true, why was he found dead 1,600 miles from home in middle of nowhere, Washington? David's strange saga begins on Thursday, January 28th, 3 days before the Super Bowl. Karen and their 10-year-old daughter went to Dallas for a weekend shopping trip. David had already gone to work, and they never saw each other before they left. At work, David complained about a stomach bug. He left early, but still taught his night class at Amarillo College. On Friday, January 29th, a friend from church spotted David running through the Southwest Terminal at Amarillo Airport. He didn't have any bags, but he sure looked like someone who was about to miss his flight. It's unclear if David got on a plane. If he did, he returned to Amarillo that night. Around 10:30 p.m., police spotted his red Ford Explorer parked outside the county courthouse. On Saturday, January 30th, someone deposited $5,000 into David's bank account. Police do not know who this beneficiary is. They do not believe David deposited the money himself. A neighbor also spotted David's Ford Explorer parked in his driveway. The one seen by police outside the courthouse was gone. On January 31st, Super Bowl Sunday, a sheriff's deputy spots the Explorer parked outside the courthouse again. The deputy also saw somebody matching David's description taking photographs of the car. At 5:30, David's VCR begins recording the Super Bowl. Now, here's where things get a little confusing. Some sources say that VCRs in 1993 could not be pre-programmed to record a future show. If David wanted to record the game, he'd have to press record at 5:30. But experts with in-depth knowledge of 1990s VCRs say otherwise. Newer models could be programmed. For example, David could put a tape in at noon and program his VCR to start recording at 5:30. Now, it's unclear what kind of VCR David had. If it were older, he'd have to press record manually, meaning he was home or someone was in his house when the game started. If it was newer, then there's no telling when David was last home. Karen and their daughter returned from Dallas after the game. The tape is still recording. There are turkey sandwiches in the fridge and laundry in the wash. 2 further indications that David or somebody has been in the house. David, however, is gone. His watch and wedding ring are on the kitchen table. Karen assumes he went to watch the game at a friend's and is working late at his office. On Monday, February 1st, a cab driver claims he picked up somebody matching David's description from a hotel in Dallas. He drove the man to the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, and the man paid in cash from a wad of $100 bills. Karen gets worried that afternoon when David misses 2 work meetings. She calls the police and reports him missing. Cops find his Ford Explorer parked outside the courthouse. The keys are hidden under the floor mat. His checkbook, license, and credit cards are also left inside. At 10:30 p.m., a motorist in Moxee, Washington, spots a disoriented man walking in the middle of State Route 24. Moments later, the driver turns around to see if the man needs help. It's too late. The man is dead, apparently hit by a car. The driver recalls seeing a Chevrolet Camaro heading in the opposite direction, but nothing ever came of it. The John Doe is declared dead on the scene. He has no ID and is wearing military-style camouflage clothing and boots. An autopsy finds no evidence of drugs or alcohol in his system. But here's the shocking part. John Doe is David Lewis. Police in Moxee simply don't know it yet. Meanwhile, his family in Amarillo assumes somebody kidnapped him. Texas police felt differently. Before he vanished, David was one of several defendants in a $3 million lawsuit. The facts are foggy. Newspapers from 1993 claim it involved an engine additive promoter. David was the only person yet to be deposed during the case. His lawyer, Tom Kelly of Dallas, doesn't think David ran to avoid the lawsuit. The last time I spoke to David, he was upbeat, Kelly said. It's a relatively insignificant case covered by insurance, no personal liability. He said nobody would benefit from David's disappearance either. Karen has long suspected foul play. She claims David got several death threats during his time as a Moore County judge between 1986 and 1990. Some believe convicted killer Bobby Templin was involved. He was found guilty of killing his wife in 1976. Then he turned around and sued her father, who David represented. Bobby ultimately dropped the lawsuit. But did he have a grudge against David? It's unlikely. According to police, Bobby didn't have the money or outside connections to order David's murder from prison. Back at the Lewis home, the only piece of David's clothing unaccounted for was a pair of green sweatpants. Karen said he'd never leave the house dressed in sweatpants. It cemented her belief that David was abducted. It's worth noting that Karen did not take a lie detector regarding her husband. Did she know something, or was she offended that police would even ask? While combing David's financials, police discovered 2 plane tickets bought in his name. The first was from Amarillo to Dallas on Super Bowl Sunday. Police couldn't determine if the ticket was ever used. The second ticket was bought on February 1st for a flight from Los Angeles to Dallas. Again, police don't know if the ticket was ever used. Why on earth would David buy a plane ticket from LA to Dallas and not the other way around? To police, this suggested that David left voluntarily. He was running from something, they just don't know what. They surmised that his law firm was failing and the recent election loss was eating away at him. They officially closed the case in 2002. They figured Lewis left on his own and there was no foul play. A year later, Detective Pat Dieter of the Washington State Police read an eye-opening article about the problems involved in investigating long-term missing person cases. It got him thinking about the Moxee John Doe. Technology and DNA had come a long way since 1993. This new thing called Google might be able to help. Detective Dieter researched missing persons of the same height and weight as the Moxee John Doe. After a week, he narrowed his Google search to about a dozen possible people. One stood out like a sore thumb: David Lewis. He was reported missing the same day the Moxee John Doe was found dead. Their pictures were a near-perfect match. The only thing missing were David's thick glasses. David had terrible eyesight. He's seen wearing his distinctive glasses in every photo taken of him. According to the police report, Moxee Doe wasn't wearing glasses, but a pair was found on his person. Thankfully, the military clothes were still in evidence lockup. Sure enough, Dieter slid the glasses out of the pants pocket. They looked exactly like the ones from David's photo. DNA from a tissue sample was compared to David's mother. The results were a 99.91% match. The Moxee John Doe was officially identified as David Lewis 10 years after he died. But how did David get to Moxee? And why was he walking in the middle of the road dressed in camouflage clothes? The cab driver puts David at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport on Monday morning. From there, it would be a 29-hour drive to Moxee. It would be impossible for David to drive there and die by 10:30. There are no direct flights from Dallas to Moxee. At best, you can land in Seattle and take a connecting flight to Yakima, the only city with an airport in the area. You could also land in Portland or Spokane. They're both about the same distance from Moxee. Now, let's assume that David flew to Seattle. That's about a 4.5-hour flight. From there, it would depend on when your connecting flight takes off. He could have also rented a car, but it's more likely that somebody picked him up and drove him toward Moxee. The plane ticket from LA to Dallas suggests that David planned to end his strange trip in California, fly home to Dallas, and then buy another ticket to Amarillo. Remember, the cab driver said David had a wad of $100 bills. Could that have been the $5,000 mysteriously deposited in his bank account? We can't find anything that says David withdrew the money, though we can't find anything that says he didn't either. It's possible that David bought the initial tickets on his credit card and then paid in cash for the flight from Dallas to Seattle. But why Washington? According to his family, he had no connection to the Pacific Northwest. No family, no friends, no clients, nothing. As for the military garb, we can only theorize as to why David was wearing it. If this were a murder, the camo clothes would allow his killers to hide David in the underbrush. They'd also suggest he was a vagrant or a drifter of some kind. Without ID, cash, or personal effects, police would likely chalk it up to a homeless man struck by a car. As you can imagine, those cases aren't high on their priority list. Unfortunately, that's where David's story ends. Police have never uncovered any further evidence regarding his travels. As of 2024, it's unclear if David was murdered or if he was the victim of a hit and run. Nobody knows how he got to Moxee or what business he had there. It's also unclear if David heard the best news of all, that his beloved Cowboys won the Super Bowl. Was it foul play, a secret life, or something else entirely? We want to hear your theories. What do you think happened to David Glenn Lewis? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more recaps that leave us all scratching our heads. I'm Chris. Amy and I are here every week with all the crime in half the time. Remember to subscribe so you never miss a story. Until next time, stay safe out there.